With the release of Dusk Till Dawn, you poor folks had to endure video after video of me talking about the Decimator Great Axe. And with all of our chats and learning since, one thing I'm certain of is that the Decimator Axe works better when your opponent has to block you. To that end, I've never liked the Decimator fatigue builds. Instead, I like to go more aggressive. The problem was they didn't have to block until near end game, and while racing, a bad draw, all red, all blue, just shuts you down. But then came Olympia and his wagers, which I believe have completely changed the scenario. While Olympia doesn't present on hits in the truest sense, he does create force block scenarios, and can do so out of the gate, thus unlocking Decimator's value. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. And thanks so much for tuning in here today. That's right, we're talking Decimator Great Axe on the channel. Once again, this time a little differently, we're talking Olympia, whom I think is the right choice for Decimator with the way that I think is best to play him. Now, I do want to acknowledge I am very well aware that there was some well-performing Boltyn fatigue Decimators out there. And fair enough, and actually Boltyn's getting another D-React. So, you know what? That's completely a total option. But as I mentioned in the intro, I really think that going aggressive with Decimator and unlocking that value as early as possible is the correct choice. So today, I really wanted to share not only the why, but also want to go over my deck list with you. Now, the special welcome is offered to my Dice Commando team members who are able to see this effectively right away. So this is actually going to go up in a couple weeks. You will have early access to this, so please enjoy. And this is also what I was running, by the way, in the recent Dice Commando team tournament. Congratulations to Anthony Galleran, hot off the press, for taking that down. Now, with the release of Dusk Till Dawn last summer, Warriors gained one of the most game-changing cards they've ever seen, which is the Decimator Great Axe. There's no question that Heavy Hitters itself as a set was an incredible boon to the Warrior class. With so many great tools in the set, so many incredible cards just in the Majestics alone, right? Blade, Furry Blade, Shift the Tide of Battle, all sorts of really awesome stuff. No one's taking that away. But I also think that there's no denying that in terms of archetype-defining cards, the Decimator Axe changed the face of the Warrior class forever, perhaps more than any other Warrior card we've seen to date. And as a permanent, non-living legend-tied weapon, it will continue to be an ever-present, hero-independent value machine for the forever of Flesh and Blood. Now, for certain, there's no denying that we certainly chatted a lot about it since Dusk Till Dawn's release, and with all of our chats and my reps in the time since, there's one thing I'm absolutely certain of: the Decimator Axe is at its best when your opponent has to block. So to that end, I've never been a fan of the fatigue-focused builds, and instead I prefer to go aggressive, pushing the opponent into the block zone as early as possible, and thus unlocking the Axe's full value. Even so, the problem we faced was that opponents didn't have to, of course, with air quotes, block you until end game. As a class, Warriors rarely apply detrimental on hits with which to slow down their opponent, right? Very rarely do we take stuff out of hand or anything like that. So the reality is that trying to race as a strategy was rarely ultimately successful. Due to the lack of said detrimental on hits, combined with Warrior identity of punishing blocks, we put the ball in the opponent's court to determine our own math. On top of that, in a race scenario, one bad draw or an all-red hand, and we're just done. But then came Olympia and his wagers, which I believe have once again completely shifted the narrative around the Decimator Great Axe. We also got a major piece alongside him in Grains of Blood Spill, and more specifically, the Vigor token, right? One of the big keys in this Decimator build is starting the Vigor train, right? Getting that one Vigor out there trailing. And a lot of times you're going to have extra blues in hand to pitch to this. But there are a couple ways that I've found. Obviously, he has, Grains of Blood Spill is out there as an option for the extra, floating. If you've got floating, you just pre-invest it. We also have Hold'em and Wage Vigor, which let you do that. But then there was another card that I wasn't playing for the longest time, because everyone's like, oh, Take It on the Chin is like one of the best cards out of the set, which it is. Doesn't necessarily help us here, but you know what does? Slap Happy, baby. Slap Happy. So yes, that card is a windmill slam in this, and I can't believe I wasn't playing it from the onset. So Slap Happy is definitely a great one to go. Another one I was having issue with was overpower for so long has been kind of a fundamental staple in many of the aggressive Decimator builds, right? We've talked about, route, overpower, felling swing is kind of your keys. Well, blue overpower has actually been kind of a warrior like side blue staple for a long time. But the math on overpower gets a little tricky in that a lot of times if you want to do like a front pump into Decimator, you only have 2 floating. So that's where I landed on Fatal Engagement. Okay, blue Fatal Engagement still gives you the buff. Sure, it's not always there, but the thing still blocks for 3 and it's still a blue. And it was turning out to be better than Fatal Engagement. Now, in the end, I'll show you I actually ended up on both. But even so, going back and forth and making sure that I had both of those available has really been working for me. Now, another one that I originally started with Double Down because, hey, I've got gold. I can do crazy things with Overpower. One of my favorite plays on Double Down is you come in with Double Down not adding anything, and then you use his helm to do the wager, or you do some other later wager, like with Up the Ante, and then all of a sudden you get effectively a +3 pump on top of that. Now, sure, that usually happens in the reaction phase, so you don't get the Overpower bonus out of it, but a lot of times it can be sneaky and tricky, or you can even maybe feint it. It's kind of a cool move. But the other thing was you always had 2 floating, as I mentioned, so route was always a good choice, right? Because Double Down itself is 2, but you can also do it with the gold. Generally, you want to do it with the gold. But if you don't have gold, it just becomes a red 3 block that kind of slows you down because it's not a blue. Again, it's not like you have a shortage of blue 3 blocks, right? So route was there. I ended up landing on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through my list. Of course, it's not at the top. Why would it be? So this is Dice Commando's Decimator Olympia, right? So you can see from the breakdown, this was specifically asked by Kevin. Love you, man. So here's the breakdown. So 31 reds, 2 yellows, and 27 blues. What do you think those 2 yellows are? Cash in, baby. That's right. Make it rain. All right. So I am running Brave Forge Bracers. It doesn't really matter. I don't see a reason not to run the bracers because, again, this is Decimator Great Axe is not a sword. Okay. So Brave Forge Bracers, greens, the Galea, and then Refraction Bolters. The Refraction Bolters are the right choice here, because you're not really going to get 2 swings in, like ever, so why would you run Dynamos? But Bolters, we also have a sneaky move with Standing Order, which I love. I love that card. So good. All right, so I do have 2 double downs. I have 3 edge ahead, so just to be very clear, edge ahead is the agility wager, right? I can never remember which one is which. But edge ahead is the agility, and then Hold'em is the vigor. So I have 3 edge aheads. I have the red-blue of Hold'em because vigor is better. I have 2 copies of E-Strike, red-blue Felling Swing, red-blue Iron Song Response, red Sharpened Steel for the front pump 3. Man, if they ever print a 0-3 Give an Axe +3, I will Windmill Slam that in here too. Sink Below, Slap Happy. This thing is so good. So good for what we're trying to do here, getting that vigor train started, right? Because remember, when you have greens on the board, even if you're only swinging your axe and you're pitching a blue to it and you have the vigor out, you're floating 1, which then you can reinvest into greens of Bloodspill, right? And just keep the vigor train rolling, right? Which is what you need for that 1 front pump. So good, so good. Take the Upper Hand. This one is really good. I do want to point out, right, just as a reminder, and this is not cracking eggs, it's kind of the way it was intended, right? But if we do have Wage Vigor in the sideboard, there are some matches, like fatigue type matches, or where you think it's going to be a long game. You bring in Wage Vigor because you can, off of a 3-card hand of Wage Vigor, a blue, and to take the Upper Hand, come in for 10, and they probably didn't really expect that, right? And again, then you can make your Vigor, and it puts you in a good spot. Okay, plus you wagered, right? Actually, you can make 2 Vigors in that point, so anyway. You get it, okay? So, sorry, not 2 vigor. Yeah, well, no, because it's not a hit. Sorry, you just make 1 vigor and 1 gold. Excuse me, all right? So we do have the 2 cash-ins. I'm going to come back to Standing Order. Don't worry, I didn't skip it. For blues, I have Brothers in Arms, Fatal Engagement, Overpower, Steelblade Shunt. Do not leave home without Steelblade Shunt, especially in a Enigma world where they're coming in with those words or weapons, kids, okay? And then Up the Ante. Right, moving into the inventory, I have now, I used to play yellow, but it is now red because of damn Herald of Triumph. Okay, so red Fyendal's Fighting Spirit, Wage Vigor are your poppers, 3 Oases, and then Route is in the sideboard. We also have 1 cash in the sideboard. Now, You pop in the cash in for when you think you're going to be facing someone with less blocks, where you need less blocks, right? Where you're going to you're going to be hitting and creating more gold, going aggressive. You sub that in. The routes go in against defensives. The double downs stay in when you again think that you're going to be kind of pushing and going more aggressive. If you think you're going to be playing more defensive, that's where you do the routes. Okay, and the two swap in directly for each other. We obviously have AB3 and then Oasis Respite to round it out. Okay, last card I want to talk about, Standing Order. So there were a lot of iterations of what this, we'll call it the Go Again card. There were a lot of iterations for me of what this card was. I started with Critical Strike because I was too focused on Commoner and what we were doing. I then moved to 1/5 Censor was where I was at. So it was at one point, it was like a bingo. But a lot of times bingo just wasn't really effective because they can choose what they want to show and then they can show you Go Again when they know you don't have anything. Wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. Standing Order, the fact that it can work offensively and defensively, help cycle the Arsenal against Command and Conquerors and stuff like that, right? Because I'm not playing Crown, because I'm playing Galea, right? So you have options there, right? So I really, really, really like Standing Order. Plus Standing Order can, one of the problems I was having with following the Deciax, right? So the play is you do the Deciax, you pop the boots, and then you can come in with the hit. Or maybe you have a Vigor from like Edge Ahead, or excuse me, an Agility from Edge Ahead. It does happen. But by and large, you're popping the boots, and then you're coming in, and then you're consuming that one to go 1/5, and you're then not able to fill grains. And then remember, I've talked about the importance of the Vigor train here, right? So landing on the 1/4 that can actually become a 6 in the right situation and kind of serve pseudo as a popper if you set it up right, this is just the right answer. Okay, so this was my, and I stumbled into it. I did, right? But that is where I landed. So anyway, that is my deck. I'm a really huge fan. This is in a really good spot. Now, let's be very clear. We're in a different meta, right? We're in a new meta that is evolving. So we'll have to see where it goes. I do not like my chances very well into Enigma overall, right? The Steelblade Shunts can do some things. So could always bring in red Shunts. The problem is when you bring in red Shunts, what do you start naturally wanting to do? Go defensive. I think when you go defensive, I know from playing this deck that when you start going defensive is when you start losing. It just takes you longer to get there, unless, of course, you're against Riptide, right? It's always going to take you a long time. It's the right play against Riptide. You just come in, non-modified, axe a million times and fatigue him out. That's what you do against Riptide. Sorry, Riptide folks. That's the way it is. But for the rest of this, if you are not playing aggressive, you're losing. So anyway, that'll do it, folks. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Nothing else. Go Commando. Oh, almost made it.